Track and field fans, day 2 is in the books. We're live from Budapest. Robert Johnson, Jonathan Gault. What a great day of track and field action. Joshua Cheptegei is golden for the third time, times 3. The men's 10,000 meters. Noah Lyles is the fastest man in the world that he's claiming the men's 100 meter gold medal, proving a lot of the doubters wrong, including yours truly, and he celebrated by promptly calling out yours truly. The men's 1,500 and women's 1,500 meter finals are set. Timothy Chariot, Mo Katir, Sinclair Johnson, and Nikki Hiltz will not be in the races, but Niels Laros will be. Can the 18-year-old teen phenom, former Let'sRun.com podcast guest, medal? Plus, Katarina Johnson-Thompson holds off Anna Hall in a dramatic heptathlon. All of that and more. Women's 400, men's 400 heats, 400 hurdle heats, 110 hurdle heats. Welcome to the show. I am Robert Johnson. This is Jonathan Gault, as I said just a second ago. Thanks for joining us. We want this show as a podcast, since I mentioned a podcast. Sign up for the Supporters Club today. Let'sRun.com/subscribe. I was talking to a top journalist in the mix zone today. He's like, I listen to your podcast most days in the gym. So.
And now we know Noah Lyles is a listener, because apparently he heard our interview with Michael Johnson from a few weeks ago. We should probably start with that race, the men's 100 meters. We have a new fastest man in the world. His name is Noah Lyles. And Robert, admit it, when he called you out in that press conference, part of you loved that.
Oh, yeah. Part of it did love it, yes. But I was scared at the time, and there's already a picture on the message board. They're like, Robert's reaction is priceless. I mean, me, distance expert, was the nice guy that went into the sprint press conference, was just sitting next to John, helping him. John had all his questions. John was in charge of the men's 100 tonight. John gets the mic, asks the first question. Noah answers it. And then Noah just, out of the blue, just says, and for your friend there, what was the actual quote?
How many medals am I going to win at the Olympics now? And to be fair to you, I think you probably would have picked him to win at least 1 medal in the Olympics, maybe 2.
Oh, medal, yes. We're talking about gold medal. But I was stunned. I was just like, I didn't know what the professional protocol was. I was like, all I said was something like, well, basically, I didn't say this to him. I never said you weren't talented. I'm just like, these other guys are really good and they're really young. And the guy sitting to Lyles' left, Vasily Tebogo, is a 2-time world junior champion at 100. He's 20 years of age. He just ran 1951 when he was gaining on Noah Lyles at the 200. And also Aaron Knighton is super fast and even younger than that. So that'll be decided next year. I don't want to take away from Lyles. I don't want to make this about me, but he was magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. This is a guy that's talked all season. Like, part of the thing with Lyles, and I was talking to Steve Soprano, our employee 1.1, who does the homepage most nights. I think part of the thing about Lyles that's kind of rubs some people the wrong way, and even I was talking to a top journalist about this, is it feels a little bit forced in the sense of the media anointed him as like the Olympic champion in 2021, and he didn't win. And some of the showboating seems like, one journalist said to me, it's like you're a really good friend, but he tries a little bit too hard. But anyways, he's been saying, I'm going to run these ridiculous times. I'm going to be the champion. He was only 3rd at the USA trials. He lost to a high schooler earlier this year. And I said right then, look, you're losing to a high schooler, you're not winning the 100-meter title. I was wrong. So, and then 3rd at USA's in the 100, he said he had COVID. I'm like, is that really legitimate? I mean, but when he came out in that semifinal and ran in the 9.8s, I was like, oh my God, like he could win it. And he backed it up and won it. And it was a really tight race. Lyles was the clear winner. What's interesting here was the lack of reaction to me. Like, Lyles is sort of a showboater or showman. He didn't react instantly. And it may have been because he didn't realize he won, which is surprising because it was clear to us that he won. It wasn't that close. But Zarnell Hughes of Great Britain, I thought I heard him briefly say in the mix zone, I thought I won. And there's a picture of him with a big smile on his face. So, no, you didn't win, Zarnell. You were 3rd, and you were only like a few thousandths from being 4th. And Oblique Seville, after his 9.8 yesterday, I thought was the favorite coming in. 22-year-old, diminutive Jamaican, soft-spoken, and I don't know. I was watching the start. I was watching Lyles and Seville, and I'm like, Lyles is right with Seville. Now, Seville looks so good. I'm like, oh, maybe he can run away with him. But people don't generally run away from Lyles. But again, going back to the 200, the fact that Tebogo was gaining on Lyles, not 200, was pretty interesting. So I kind of feel bad for Seville. He was so good in every other round except for the final. It wasn't like he was terrible, but I was talking to a U.S. Sisters runner. I'm like, it's kind of arbitrary, right? 3 medals? Like, what if they had 4? You know, because Darnell Hughes was ecstatic afterwards. He's like, it's been a long time since Britain was on the podium. Like, all he wanted was some medal. And it was 20 years since a Brit his last medal in the men's 100, Darren Campbell, 2003. And kind of interesting because Darnell, John, if we're going to break down this race a little bit more, known for letting the nerves get to him, known for false starting. Did you see his reaction time today?
I'm looking at it now. Jesus, he almost did full start. 0.105. Wow, we almost had a Devon Allen controversy in the final. I mean, Simbine's reaction time was 0.7. And so I think, was it you? Someone next to me was like, oh, man, we got another Devon Allen. I'm like, no, we didn't. Like 0.7, I think at that point, sorry, 0.07. I think at that point, you probably are just getting lucky or jumping the gun or whatever. I mean, we can have a debate of whether the full start limit should be at 0 or 0.1, but I do think I don't have a real issue with that thing. But it did look like, I think you got to be careful with that pressure you put into the blocks. Like, even if you're not leaving the blocks, if you're really pushing down on them before the gunfires, they're going to get you on it. And I feel bad for him because he was on fire coming into Worlds. He'd won all his last 4 races. He'd been winning Diamond Leagues. Who knows what he could have done in this thing? Because, you know, let's rewind to yesterday morning, Robert, the first day of the World Championships. This was not a foregone conclusion at all that Noah Lyles was going to win this race. I think Fred Curley was the favorite. He didn't even make the final.
We'll get into that. I've got to complain about that. But, John, you just said it. By the way, folks, you should be going to Let's Run. I know some of you are in cars and you're busy and you've got families, but go to Let's Run every day. Click on some ads, go to the forum. But you said in your article, in the Britain article that we just put up about 5 minutes ago, there was 20 guys in the world that had run faster than Noah Lyles at 100 meters. So, of course, far from a favorite.
Yeah, but here's the thing with Noah is we knew if he was close midway through this race, he was probably going to win. Or at least I knew that. And especially after watching the semifinal, I was like, if he's there, I think he's going to win because no one can match his top speed. And he doesn't break down at the end of races. He's very good all the way through. The issue is, like, in a World Championship final, you got to be with the guys halfway through a field, you got to start pretty damn well. Because if you're in a World Championship final, you're a good starter. So Lyles didn't just start well. His coach, Lance Brauman, told him he thought it was his best start acceleration by far he's ever seen from Lyles in the 100. It results in his personal best, 9.83. I mean, the clutchness of Noah Lyles. He ran faster twice tonight than anyone else ran even once today. 9.83 in the final, 9.87 in the semis. He's just a championship performer. And I know he did not win on the biggest stage. He got beat in the Olympics. But last year, he runs an American record in the 200-meter final in Eugene on home soil. And tonight, been talking a big game all year. He's been saying, this is the year I do the double. He runs his 2 best races of the year at the World Championships in the semis and final. I mean, that is clutch. That is brilliance. So much props to Noah Lyles, a well-deserved 100-meter world champion.
Absolutely. Another crazy stat John has. The last 3 Worlds, obviously, there's been 9 medalists, 9 medals handed out in the men's 100 meters. 9 different people have won those medals. Now, that's wild. No one has repeated.
No, since Bolt left, this event has just been kind of a mess. We've had people who look like they're going to be the king, right? We had Christian Coleman. When he wins in Doha, I'm like, all right, he's here to stay. He's going to be the Olympic champion in Tokyo. He's going to be the guy to beat. He's running 9.76. Amazing. Then he gets himself suspended with whereabouts failures. Hasn't been the same ever since coming back. Then we get Marcel Jacobs in Tokyo. Now, we weren't sure if that was going to be kind of a, would he be here to stay? I don't think that was clear. But then Fred Curley last year, Curley was dominant. He was fantastic, 9.76. personal best, and then he wins Worlds. Right, didn't run quite as fast in the final, but I'm like, all right, Fred Kerley, he comes out this year, he's winning everything. Beaten at USA's, beaten in Poland, didn't even make the final, didn't really have any explanation for it, right, Robert? You talked to him briefly in the mix zone? Or did you get to ask any questions? This was one of our complaints is like the 100-meter world champion bombs out in the semis and tries to just ignore the media in the mix zone, which you wouldn't get this in other professional sports. He did eventually stop and talk briefly, but how'd that go?
Much to the chagrin of the Associated Press, because USATF said he wasn't speaking to the media, but then he saw a friend in the mix zone. And I've got to admit, I don't know her name, the young lady for I think is doing interviews for Citius. She's friends with all the sprinters, and she does a great job. And it's all positive. It's not what I would consider real journalism, like investigative questions, but they enjoy talking to her, and she gets stuff out of them. It's better than nothing. But yeah, he said, I've had a good year. Just guys are better than me today. He didn't really offer any excuses. He said he loves ASICs. He's going to keep running, etc. Other stat here, John has 4 different Americans have won the last 4 world titles. It's just been, the event's been up in years. I think Lyles has, I mean, he's been great for a while now. The more I think about this, but this is what, I never said he wasn't great. Never said he wasn't a talent, but I just felt like he missed his opportunity. Clearly, he would have been the 2020 Olympic champion. And I feel like COVID cost him that. And this is a guy that's a people person. He thrives on people and spotlight and COVID, he missed that. And then he got an antidepressants, and everyone talked about great America. We all think that a pill can save our problems and save us from disease. It can't. We're all going to die at some point. I'm not saying there's no point for medicine, but I do think America is way over medicated. And he didn't win in 2021. And I was like, okay, in 2024, Tobago's going to be in his prime. Knighton's going to be in his prime. Whatever. And when Michael Johnson reacted to me saying he's never going to win, one way to say is, if you're trying to make a hot take, Michael Johnson's basically saying Tobago and Knighton can't win next year. I still think they can win. Next year is 12 months away. A little bit less, I guess, because the Olympics are earlier.
But here is the thing, Robert, about that, is we're saying like, oh, Knighton's going to be there. Knighton's run faster when he was younger than Lyles. He should theoretically get even better, and maybe he's breaking the world record next year. But then you actually look at what Knighton's done on the track this year. He's taken a step back from 2022, and he hasn't run
so far.
So far, we will see in the 200. Like Noah Lyles in the press conference, he was acting as if he already had 3 gold medals. He's like, oh, I'm doing the double here, and then once I win the 200, I'm going to win the 4x1, and that's going to be the start of a dynasty. I'm like, well, slow your roll, buddy. First of all, you probably going to win the 200, but he's still going to beat Tobago, who was close to him in Monaco. Still going to beat Knighton. And then the 4x1, not even close to a lot for the Americans. We've seen how many disasters in that race through the years.
What were you just saying, John? I had a point to make.
Well, I was saying that we assume these phenoms like Knighton and Tobago are going to just keep getting better, and they don't always, which I think Tobago deserves credit for this, because last year, I thought he was in 9.8 shape last year when he's running 9.91 and celebrating like Usain Bolt when he's winning World Juniors. He comes out and, it wasn't, he was solid on the circuit, getting second and third a bunch. But tonight when he needed to, he ran his best 100 of his life. He ran 9.88. He got the silver medal, only 20 years old. I was like, wow, when's the last time a 20-year-old medaled? Do you know the answer to this, Robert? It was in my article.
Wasn't it? It was Weldon's favorite runner.
It was Trayvon Bromell, 2015 Worlds. He got the bronze. So it has happened before, but it's not common for a 20-year-old to medal. Tobago, obviously huge ceiling. He could pick up another medal in the 200. Bright future. He could be the guy. This was Africa's first World Championship medal in the 100 meters. I couldn't believe it, but it's Tobago, the 20-year-old, who gets it.
It's very hard to believe, because I think the average person, and I don't want to go off on race and genetics, but they think, oh, white people aren't good at sprinting. Black people are good at sprinting. But black people in Africa, Frankie Fredericks has won 2 Olympic medals, had never won a World Championship 100-meter men's medal, which is wild. Looking at the comments here, I'm not going to do what Weldon and John did a few days ago when I had my shadow ban from the podcast. Weldon is not here tonight. He helped set up the podcast. He put up a couple of comments and the underline, but he's spending time with the wife and family. He said last night, I felt like I was just getting in y'all's way over talking. I thought he was fine. I like having a third voice to keep us on it. But back to Lyles for a minute. I was very impressed by his press conference, in the sense of I think in the past, again, I talk about the forced aspect of things and like, is he playing a role? Does he really believe this stuff? The fashion? Is he just trying to be somebody else? But I just loved how he said, can we appreciate, I'm paraphrasing, but the three of us were all doubted here. I was stunned by this. He said, we're all 200-meter runners. Basically said, no one expected anything of us in the 100. So
that's not true of Tebogo. Tebogo went 991 and won World Juniors last year.
It's the opposite, though. It's weird. I was stunned that he said Tebogo because I've always viewed Tebogo as a 100-meter runner. He was won the World Junior the last 2 years in 100, but he's finished second in the 200. So I'm like, oh, he's a better 100. But then he hasn't been running great in the 100 until tonight. He got silver. But he was gaining on Lyles in the 200 when they landed in the Diamond League. And then Lyles kind of caught himself and realized, well, Hughes, obviously he's a world leader coming in. People probably expected him to win a medal, but he's had so many championship failures. So I thought it was just a really cool comment, kind of like aware. Like so many people are so self-absorbed, like what their lives were. Tebogo seems like a young college kid who's just happy to be there. He's like, yeah, I just wanted to make the final. He doesn't have the pressure. I think some of the Americans have more pressure.
Well, the funny thing is, though, who invited the most pressure on them in this meet? Noah Lyles. He said, I'm going to run 9.65, which, again, he wasn't close, which none of us thought he would run. But he said 9.65, 19.10, I'm going to win. You know, he's winning both. He was talking outlandishly in the pre-race press conference, you know, him and Fred Curley going at it. But he backed it up. Noah Lyles, I think he loves that. He loves the spotlight. He loves the attention. Some people love it. Some people don't. Both approaches are fine, but it is crazy to me that Lyles will just say things. He'll say fiery things to get people fired up, and then he just comes out and backs it up and delivers. That's awesome.
See, I see Weldon now on the show. He's behind the scenes now, folks. Weldon, just people want to know where you were. So you feel loved. Ingebrigtsen, it shows you. I mean, there's billions of people on planet Earth. They all want a medal. I thought this guy was your favorite this morning, and now he doesn't have a medal. He was fine with not medaling, much better than most Americans. He's very soft-spoken. He talked to the press for length. He's basically said, I've had a lot of injuries. I was taking it conservative. He didn't race for about 2 months, so I think he was happy to get fourth, even though he's been fourth at the last two Worlds. And to be honest, one thing that needs to be stated is no one's going to remember. Well, they'll still remember it, but there's a huge difference between being the Olympic 100-meter champion and the world 100-meter champion. Let's run. We care about the Worlds. The general public does not, nearly to the same extent. John will admit it. And the men's 100 semis, we get there at 4:15 this morning or whatever it was this afternoon. And Lyles and Marcel Jacobs were in the same heat. And the cheers for Jacobs were by far the loudest. Back me up here.
Was it? That was so long ago. I'm trying to remember.
I asked you at the time.
No, it was Marcel Jacobs. Also, the crowd has been awesome through 2 days in Hungary. Robert, can we give him a shout out? I was like, look, this is the men's 100-meter final, Sunday night. This is going to be a big test. Are they ready to host this thing? Are they going to bring the atmosphere? They brought the atmosphere. They're screaming for the Hungarians. It helped the Hungarian medaled in the hammer throw and was in contention in the heptathlon. That heptathlon was super loud. It was awesome. But the stadium, it was not 100% full, but I would say it was like 90% full, 92 or something. There were a lot of full seats, very good atmosphere. And the stadium's beautiful. Everyone seems to like the stadium. It's right on the Danube River. It looks cool from the outside. They're doing a great job so far.
The atmosphere is amazing. The overhead shots, the stadium's amazing. John and I, we have had a little bit of trouble with the calves. We got ripped off last night. So tonight we took scooters like young kids. They're all over the place. It's kind of like the U.S. like 5 years ago when the scooters were big in every American city. They're big here. We did Lime and whatnot. But
it was wild. I just want to talk about. We can talk about that adventure in a minute, but it was crazy.
But the atmosphere is amazing. The stadium is fantastic. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful venue. It's loud. The U.S. long jumper that got the silver tonight,
Tara Davis Woodhull.
It's a triple name. Help me out there. She was like, just the Hungarians just keep it going. It was so loud, and I'm not sure if they were cheering for the Hungarian hammer thrower that medaled or the fourth placer in the heptathlon, but it was loud in there. And the American, Tamara said, we can't do it like that in America. Like, people are like, really? She's like, no, it was amazing. She's like, and I got a text last night from my buddy, Chris Lear, author of Running with the Buffalo, Supporters Club member. This is last night. I meant to read it on the air. First impression of Worlds. The Jamaican sprinter in the 100 who ran 9.88 looks amazing. His stride is so different. No kick, no back kick than the others, like the others. Is that an advantage? Well, not tonight. It's a little bit short, but he could win the Olympic champion next year. The stadium looks great, and the evening atmosphere looked awesome. Crowds make a huge difference in ambience and TV. Absolutely. Jakob Ingebrigtsen looks unstoppable. We'll have more on that. And I'm going to say something that may trigger some of you. If you have body issues or food issues, don't.
Oh boy, where is this going?
Mute yourself for the next 10 seconds. Josh Kerr finally looks skinny. I'm pegging him for a medal and medal alone. Now, Chris is a former 409 high school prep miler who, to be honest, can easily put on weight and sometimes lose it. So he's into the body type. And that's just what he said to me. Those are his impressions. So anyways.
Let's move to the 10K. We have a 10,000 meter final. We're 20 minutes in. We haven't even talked about it. Joshua Cheptegei, third straight world title in the 10K. 153, lost 800, 53-second lost lap. Great battle over the last 400. The Olympic champion, Solomon Barega, against the world champion, Joshua Cheptegei, battling it out for gold. Cheptegei's too straight. I thought Barega might have it. Barega was right on him around that final turn. Actually, the Kenyan, the eventual silver medalist, Daniel Abenyo, again, he's another one of those guys with two names. I mean, they stopped calling him Simiyu, and now he's Abenyo. It's confusing. We need to figure this thing out. But he was moving up really well in the final turn, and I was like, oh, this could be really awesome. And then Cheptegei and Barega separated a little bit. Cheptegei kept looking back. He was looking over his shoulder like 3 or 4 times on that, making sure Barega was – I mean, Barega's a kicker. We know he can kick. But it was Cheptegei who got the victory, third straight. I'm like, man, he's the dominant force in this event. How many does he have to go to catch Bekele? Bekele won 4 world titles. He also won an Olympic title, so he's at 5. Mo Farah also at 5 between world and Olympic titles. So Cheptegei's got some work to do still, but he's only 26 years old.
You're knowing the 5,000.
Well, yes, I'm saying 10,000 only. If you want to move up to 5,000, Bekele has 8.
Yeah,
Farah has 10.
25.
And Cheptegei has 4.
Folks, sometimes y'all may think we sound smart if you're an average accountant and you don't get the opportunity to sound smart and track. 25 minutes ago, John's like, hey, how many does Cheptegei have? He's getting up there. And then is he catching Bekele? And then he's like, oh, Bekele's got 8. And then today he makes it sound like they're similar.
What? Cheptegei's 26. I mean, he started winning them in 2019, and 4 years later, he's now got 4 of them. So okay, if he sticks around, he's got the Olympics next year. He's got the 5K next week. I'm not saying he's going to beat Jakob, but he could. He's one of the guys who's got in contention.
Walden wants us to sit up higher, John.
I'm sorry, my posture was never my strong suit.
I can lower the camera actually from remotely. Yeah, I have a remote. Our camera operator.
But no, Cheptegei, that guy, he delivers on the big stages. Okay, he said after Worlds last year, he had an injury. His knee was bothering him. Took him a few months to sort it out. I don't think he was probably 100% at World Cross Country, and he got the bronze medal. So still, I commend. He very easily could have just said, screw it, I'll stay at home if I'm not 100%. But no, he goes down to Australia, runs World Cross, gets the bronze, comes back, races a couple times in the Diamond League circuit. But he's like, look, I raced a couple times. This is where it matters. This is the one I really cared about. Shows up, wins it. Yeah, boss.
Without a doubt. And if you remember at the Diamond League opener earlier in the year, when he ran 12:53 in Florence, 4th place, not terrible, but when somebody else is running .52, I mean, he lost to Kajelcha and Luis Grijalva. It's not great, but he's like, look, this is the fastest I've ever opened up. And then a couple weeks later, he runs 12:41 in Lausanne, also losing. But he's like, that's the best opener, and now he's the champion. He was just way better than those other guys. One real quick, back to the sprint real quick. Thomas Lester, loyal live listener, says, I bet Kipyegon doesn't run to his phone as soon as he races or after he practices. I think he's comparing him to Lyles. it was a very interesting comment in the press conference. Somebody who knows the insides of Tebogo's camp said, how much do you credit your camp? They told you to get off social media earlier in the year. So apparently he was running to his phone, has now gotten off his phone and is doing quite well. And
Noah Lyles is on his phone all the time and just won the gold medal. I think it depends on the kind of athlete.
Well, fair enough. And it'll be interesting in the 200 because after Lyles called me out at the end of the show, at the end of the presser, I did ask him, I said, hey, you're a student of sport. You must watch the tape. Like, are you super confident in the 200? You must have realized that Tebogo was gaining on you at the end of the 200, which I've never seen happen before. And he said, yeah, he did catch up on to me before a little bit. But, and I thought this was a really smart comment. He's like, I remember when I first ran 19.5, and I thought I would do it again at the Olympics.
Worlds 2019, yeah.
And I didn't. And it's the same thing in his Knighton last year. He was running hot early in the year and not at the end of the year. So pretty interesting things. But back to the 10. Cheptegei, the man. Barega, look,
he pissed away a silver medal. Let's just call it for what it is. This happened, I think, in Moscow. I want to say it was.
He pulled the Molly huddle.
Yeah, he pulled the Molly huddle. But was it Gebrewein in Moscow who got passed, or was it? It might have been a Kenyan. Whoever that. I think it happened in that race as well. But yeah, Barega, he was going for gold. I respect that. And, he was saying, I wanted to win. But he could have gotten silver if he just ran hard through the line. You've run hard for 9,996 meters. It really shouldn't be much of an effort to just run that extra 4 meters hard and get the silver medal. I mean,
correct.
He's the only one he cost himself. It's not like anyone else was harmed. But, come on, dude.
Look, when I start coaching all these top people in the world, John, I'm going to have 2 rules. One, run the entire race distance and then lean, unless you're way ahead, and then you can celebrate. In first place only. 2, never leave lane 1, ever. But if you're boxed in, always stay in lane 1 because everybody else will leave wave 1 and be a stupid and you'll find space. But
how'd that work out for Joe Wascom?
I mean, you don't mean Wascom, you mean...
I mean Joe Wascom yesterday in the first round.
Because he didn't leave lane 1. He tried to leave lane 1. Instead, if he'd stayed there, he would have made it. But Barega, I talked to him through an interpreter afterwards, and he's like, I'm not happy. I'm like, well, if you got silver, would you have been happy? He said, no. Like, he's got the champion's mindset. I'm the Olympic champion. I wanted to win, which is kind of interesting because, I mean, it's not interesting that he wants to win, but this is by far his best result of the year. I mean, he was 12th at World XC, 2nd at the Ethiopian Trials, 9th in the Florence Diamond League, 12:56, 5th in Lausanne, 13:5. So despite the less than stellar buildup, he was running for the win. And then Abeno should really be super encouraged. And this reminds me of last year, John. Who was it? Charles Semenyo who got the silver? Am I making that name up?
I think that name is totally made up. Stanley Mburu was the silver medalist last year.
Oftentimes a Kenyan kind of comes out of nowhere and snags a medal. But this medal from Abeno was totally unexpected. Like, he's coming into this, if you told me that someone from Kenya is going to win a medal, kind of an unexpected medal, because I think we all thought Argawi was going to medal, and there was someone moving up from the 5,000, I would have said it's Nicholas Kamele, the Kenyan champ, who's run 12:46, and was 4th in the Olympic, I think, 5,000, has been close to a medal before. Instead, it's Abeno. Kamele's 24, Abeno's 27. He was a runner-up at the Kenyan trials. He only has a 12:54 PB. He was eliminated in the heats of Tokyo. He was only 10th last year, and he just ran like a baller today.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell what kind of shape he was in this year. Looking back at his results, we didn't talk about him at all. I mean, how many times have we said bad news for Grant Fisher when someone runs well in the 5K or 10K? Daniel Abeno, whatever you want to call him, his name never came up in that conversation, in part because the only real top races he ran were the Kenyan trials in the 5K and the 10K, and he got 2nd in both. He was 6th at World Cross, but his Diamond Leagues, he was getting beat by Grant Fisher at the end of the last season. He was 5th in Brussels in the 5K, 12:54, 14th in Monaco in the 3K. He's not someone we would have said, oh yeah, he's going to come out and beat Berahu Aragawi, who's been absolutely on fire this year.
But he ran Monaco this year?
No, he ran Monaco last year.
No.
Well back.
Right.
But I guess it's interesting, like, I think just anyone on the Kenyan team, this is a gross overgeneralization, but it's probably true. Anyone on the Kenyan team, their like ceiling, it's probably going to be higher than just your average American 10K entrant, right? Like some Kenyan, in this case, Abenyo, pops off with some massive outlier performance, and we're not as stunned as we would be if this was like Joe Klecker getting the silver medal, you know, who has also run 12:54. They have the exact same PB.
Absolutely. But I was going to say, in some ways, this should be encouraging for like a Klecker or a Kincaid, because this guy's never been sniffing a medal. And to be honest, they've never been sniffing a medal. But in other ways, this race is very depressing. And I always say it. Arigawi is the perfect example of why Grant Fisher should be depressed, I guess. I mean, people are like, well, why hasn't Grant won a medal? He's so damn good. I mean, what are Grant Fisher's PRs, John?
7:28, 12:46, 26:33.
So those are pretty good. I'm not going to lie. But Barahu Arigawi, younger than Grant Fisher, fourth. So Grant Fisher was fifth in the 2020 Olympics, which were held in 2021. Barahu Arigawi is younger. He's fourth. He's run 12:40, 26:46. And yet again,
he's 7:26.
Yeah, and yet again, he's fourth today. He's never medaled on the world stage.
He did get silver at World Cross. Let's give him credit for that. But on the track, no medals.
Yeah. And I have a Facebook listener tonight. Nobody's always YouTube. David Shura says, I wish Arigawi raced like he usually does. I know world champs are different, but man, that would have made this so exciting. I mean, the guy deserves some credit, right? Like, I put it in the recap. Like, he pushed from 2 miles out. He pushed it all the way basically to 600, really 500 almost, until Cheptegei took over. And he tried. I mean, it was hot as hell. I walked over to the stadium. I did sleep in through the morning session. John covered that for me. And I finally went to bed last night at 3:30 in the morning here after not sleeping for like, 2 days. Decided to walk and then realized I was going to walk fast. It was so hot. I decided to take one of those scooters. But I've got this in the recap here. The pace, 2 miles to go, 65, 64, 64, 64. He runs a 4:19.54 from 2 miles, from 8 laps to 4 laps. And then he goes a little bit slower, 66, 65. And then they go 60 and then 53.45. So the final mile must have been, what's the final time here, John?
27:51.
So they run a 4:05 final mile. So they go 4:19, 4:05. So if you're a high school 2 miler and you think you're a pretty big deal because you broke 9 flat, these guys basically they probably broke 8:25 for the last 2 miles.
And they did an 87-degree heat and, fair amount of humidity as well.
But it was only they're better than Weldon's PR. 27:51.
Yeah, turns out these guys are pretty good. All right, so let's talk about the Americans.
Yeah.
Because I went in and it was the same thing we said with Elise Cranny yesterday in the women's race.
We got to apologize.
It's humid. It's kind of slow. This might be the chance where Woody Kincaid could medal or at least contend for a medal. This is his best shot because if it's super fast, he's probably not going to be able to hang on. He'll probably get dropped. I mean, I guess he's run 27:02, but these guys can probably do better than that. Anyway, or 27:06. Anyway, the worry was Woody Kincaid was in a race that was hot, humid, pretty slow. It was the 2021 Olympics. Didn't go that well for him. He's better now, but he was the U.S. champion 2 years ago, and that was my concern. Well, Woody actually handled the heat the best of any of the Americans. Joe Klecker, they went out in 14:21, and he was still getting dropped. I mean, that's not even bad day in the heat. That's like awful, worst race he's run in a number of years. Like Joe Klecker is very consistent, and this was just an awful day at the worst possible time. And I'm sure the heat didn't help, but oh man, it's a stinker. I feel bad for the guy, but that was terrible. Sean McGorty was the next guy to get dropped, and then finally Kincaid gets dropped with 2 miles to go, Robert, around there.
4.5 laps.
4.5 laps. All right, so he made it further than everyone else.
No, he was making it close to the point where it was just like Elise Cranny last night. I thought, wow, could this be the medal race where he medals? Even going to the stadium, like, could we have a Billy Mills moment? I mean, so his kick is so good that I was at least contemplating it for like a 1 in 1,000
Well,
chance.
yeah, because he got dropped with about a mile to go, and Robert's like, oh man, if that gap's the same, do you think he can medal? I'm like, well, we both know that gap's not going to be the same. But 2 laps later, it was the same. So we're like, oh,
they slowed down there from 4 to 3 and 3 to 2. And I told Woody afterwards, I said, hey, we were still debating, man, with like 3 laps to go. Could you kick? But we thought there was too many guys ahead of him. Like 3 of them would find a good lap. He's like, thanks for having faith in me. So a couple post-race quotes here. Klecker, I mean, it was terrible. We turned to David Monti, former elite coordinator for the New York Roadrunners. I'm like, David, and I hate to be like the guy in the armchair quarterback. Weldon dropped out of the Pan Am games. I've got no problem with dropping out. Some coaches have a problem with it. Some athletes do. I'm like, wouldn't you rather run with the lead pack for as long as you can and then just drop out instead of like falling off like 2 miles into the race? But he said, he was honest about it. I mean, really no excuses. On a day when I had no excuses not to be my best, I was probably my worst all season. I don't think there's really any doubt about it. He was definitely his worst. But for Kincaid, you know, he's like, it's clear, like Mo, my teammate, or his old teammate, I said his Bowerman teammate, his ex-Bowerman teammate, has the strength and fitness to be able to stay there with those guys till a lap to go. And I definitely think I got closer this year. I just don't think I necessarily like indicative of the jump I made in fitness. But definitely a hard learning lesson. Oh, that was McGordy. That was McGordy's quote. My comment. That's not my apologies. It's not Woody Kincaid. Woody Kincaid said it was a boiler out there, but he said it's a good experience. And then, am I reading too much on this? Did he take a dig at Grant Fisher? He said there's a good chance we're all back out there next year.
I mean, yes, that's a dig at Grant Fisher. He's the American record holder. He wasn't on the team, but I mean, maybe a veiled dig. I don't know. It wasn't. That's not something he's thinking in the moment. He's probably trying to say something encouraging, and he's not just trying to like. I don't think his plan was, oh, I'm going to shit on Grant Fisher and make this comment. It was just like, hey, I think we can all do better next year. The question I guess I have for you moving forward, Robert, we've seen Woody run the 10K twice at Global Championships, hasn't been close to a medal. I think just based on his skill set, I would think he'd be better suited to medaling in the 5K maybe, because these 10Ks, it's either really humid or it's quite quick. And I think neither of those really play to his strengths. Like moving forward, I mean, you can double next year at the Olympic trials because there's a gap, but I don't know, like, do you think he made a mistake doing the 10K over the 5K this year at USA's?
Well, no, because he doesn't know that he's going to make the 5K.
Sure.
So,
but I'm saying going in, you don't know that.
I listened to him on a podcast, and he's like, it takes me a while to recover. So the short window of the normal USA's, and just compared to the trials, is hard for him. But yeah, I think he's better suited for 5,000. I think these, like, when you look at McGordy and Klecker, they're giants compared to these other guys in the 10K. And people can say Weldon gets mad. We're too big for the thing. Weldon, we're 6'1". I'm 6 feet. Weldon's a little bit taller than me. Like, that's just a lot of body mass to dissipate the heat. And I think that, you know, it can be tough. So I think his best bet is the 5,000. It kind of reminds me of something Mark Wetmore said, former or current Colorado coach, thank God. This is coach. And like when it's wet and rainy at NCAAs, people used to think, oh, it's going to slow it down and you know.
Where is this analogy going?
Everyone's going to be together. It's going to help the kickers because you can't run away from people. It's just such a mess. And Wetmore one time, I think, told Chris Lear or me or somebody, he's like, no, it makes the race longer. It's harder to hang in for 30 minutes than it is 28 minutes. And I think the same thing true might be in the heat. I think they'd rather – I asked Woody this question. He said, I try to prepare for everything. But I think that he would be better suited. And I think all of the Americans would – well, he said – Woody's like, we'd all like it to be decent weather.
Yeah, know? In America, it's hard to get this kind of weather for training, or at least when you're going up to altitude all the time. Usually the altitude places –
what's happening to the camera, John?
I don't know, Robert. For some reason, this camera – just has a mind of its own sometimes. I don't know what settings you put it on. It's ridiculous. You're getting a view of our Airbnb in Budapest. Hope you guys all like it. We got some nice carpeting here. But Yeah, the Americans, like where they're training over the summer, Park City or St. Moritz or Flagstaff, is not warm. It's high altitude. Whereas the Ugandans and the Kenyans, it's high altitude, but it also is quite often warm. I asked Cheptegei, what do you do to prepare for the heat? And he's like, well, some of it's mental, but some of it's, we just we train in warm weather and we get used to it. When you live near the equator, you're going to be training in warm weather. So, I'm not saying that Americans should move to Uganda or move to Florida, but some of it is just like that's kind of something you just got to deal with. And we have seen some Americans run well in the heat. Galen Rupp's done it. Grant Fisher was 4th in Tokyo when it was quite hot, and he almost medaled in Eugene when it was hot. But some of it just comes with getting to that next level, but it is hard to replicate.
We're back, John. We're back.
Thank God.
Thank God if you're not watching it live, the camera has a mind of its own. I don't know why I decided to just film the carpet. This is the atmosphere we said of the crowd's amazing. Our apartment is vintage, Budapest, Eastern European, old school, 1950s, 1960s. Anyways, all right, enough 10K, enough 100. Oh, Mohamed, he was pretty good, right?
6th. Usually the 5K is his better event, but this to me is a good sign for him in the 5K. If he's running competitively in the 10K and the 5K is his better event, good for him. Let's go to the 1500 semis. I love the 1500 semis. They're super exciting. This one made it very simple. It's just top 6 in each. Move on.
Oh, wait, one thing.
Oh my God, go ahead.
World Athletics, if you're listening, how many lanes are on the track at all these championships, John?
9.
My son's trying to FaceTime me. I don't think it's a good idea to answer that one. And how many semifinal heats are there?
Well, in the 1500, there's only 2.
I'm talking about the 100.
The 100, there's 3.
The marquee events and the calendar. And what's 3 times 3?
9.
So why don't we just take the top 3 from every heat and put them in the final?
That's Sebco's next burning issue. I think because the rules for these championships say you have to have 8 in the final, but we saw who did it this year. The NCAA started taking 9 to the final.
Right, I get it. They used to want to have 9 in case there was some fall or whatever. To me, if there's a fall or whatever, you have a race off. Or if there's a tie, you have a race off. Like that would make it more exciting. And it'd be hard to have a race off. Or at that point, flip a coin. You can't really have a race off. There's not enough time between the 100 semis and the 100 final to do it. But anyways, that's a side point. 1500s, it was clear. Top 6, and you're in. 7th and later, you're out. And
yeah, I want to do a little stock up, stock down maybe from some of these guys, what we saw in the semifinals. And let's start with Heat 1, which was won by Yared Nuguse, the American. I think stock up. And Robert has all season long, Robert has tried to find reasons to doubt Yared Nuguse. And Yared Nuguse keeps showing why he shouldn't be doubted. And I think tonight was another example. I actually thought he looked better in this race than he did in the prelims on Saturday. He didn't seem to be in any doubt. It was a fairly tight finish at the end, I guess. Everyone was within 0.3 of a second, the top 7. But Nuguse was well positioned. He made it pretty quick. It was 3:32 in a semifinal. He advanced and he won the heat against some very good guys. I think this is very encouraging.
Encouraging, but he's only 0.298 away from being eliminated.
Okay, so is literally everyone who qualified for the final from this heat.
Fair enough. His last, it only scared me. He had the lead. If you didn't watch the race, he had the lead coming off the turn. But these races are so tight. And then, former podcast guest, the 18-year-old Lyles is boxed in behind him. He rolls up on the inside, totally boxed, just decides to go on the inside. And then, a bunch of other people are coming up. And Nuguse kind of 5 meters to left, they were really gaining on him. Why doesn't he accelerate? And he didn't really accelerate, but then he leans. I'm like, and the lean made me nervous. I'm like, oh, he's panicking. That means he was tying up. Now, when I asked him about it later, he said, I didn't realize they were coming up until I saw the scoreboard with 5 meters left. So it's quite a quick panic. I should just lean. As everybody, as we saw with Borrega, your worst nightmare is to realize too late. So yes, I think I shouldn't be only having talked to him about it, 20% of that makes me nervous. Like, was he totally tying up or not? I don't think he was.
Look, I think there's like 10, almost everyone in this final is a medal contender.
Nah.
But behind
I guess you're right.
I'm looking at these people, these finalists from this first. So you tell me who's not a medal contender out of these guys. Maybe Habs.
You said stock up for who?
Stock up for Nuguse. Stock way up for Lyles. This kid's amazing, Robert. I mean, this might be blasphemy. Could this guy be the next Jakob?
Yes.
He's so effing good. He's got range. He's run 144 for 800, which is way faster than Jakob's actually ever run. But I bet Jakob could run 144 right now. He's run 13:23 for 5K. And then yesterday in the prelims, he runs 3:34. Today, he looked amazing. He's just casually speeding up making an inside pass on the home straight to run a PB, national record, 3:32.74 for the Netherlands, making the final at the age of 18. This guy looks like he's a 25 or 26-year-old, not someone making his major championship debut. He's amazing.
Amazing. And then he thought he won because Seiko again screwed up like they did at the timing reaction last year. And they put him up as the winner on the board. He was like, yeah, pumped. But again,
the timing's been all over the place.
He's like
I don't understand.
He's like a Let's Run nerd that's like living the dream. And he's like, remember we talked on the podcast, like, hopefully you make worlds and I'll meet you in person. Now he's not only making worlds, this dude legit could medal, maybe even win it. I mean, I think obviously they have a favorite. What?
You think Lyles is going to win the world title in the 1500?
I said he could win it.
No, he couldn't.
No, Lyles.
No, I don't think anyone can win this apart from Jakob. I mean, I might sound like an idiot.
Only Jakob can win it? No.
Yes.
So if he gets food poisoning between now and then, or gets arrested, or
barring
killed
some
in a terrorist
unforeseen circumstance, Robert, why is this camera moving at all? No one wants to see a close-up of my face.
The girls do. Someone said, John, you look good tonight.
Thank you. Anyway. No, look, Jakob, we'll get to him in a second. That guy's ridiculous. But Lyles could medal. That would not shock me. Because, like I said, who couldn't medal from these qualifiers? Nuguse, yes.
Nuguse wins it. I didn't pay attention to Kipyegon. I don't know what he did. Lyles was amazing. Habs, I apologize to my French neighbor who's moving back to France. I don't pay any attention to him. He's like one of the one guy. He can't medal. But
he's run 3:29 this year. I mean, I don't think he's good. I think he's worse than a lot of these guys, but he's in the conversation. Nordas can medal. Neil Gorley, I mean, his tactics haven't been great in any of his races recently. But if they really string it out and it's like a 3:28 race in the final, maybe he does that, though. He's never broken 3:30.
I love talking to Gorley after this race. He said, I felt terrible out there. I'm not going to lie. But I've always wanted to be good enough that I can make a final without feeling good. And I've done it. So 1/1000th of a second, he's entered the final. So he's like, normally I feel myself as I recover pretty well. I'd like the finals to be on 2 days, not 3. And looks like Walden's trying to join us.
Well, no, he's gone. Yeah, they get a nice break. The final's not till Wednesday, so they get 2 whole days of recovery in between, which I suppose will be good for him. Speaking of, well, I guess looking at the other people in this race, not a great night for the Spaniards. Last year, they went 3-4-11 in the World Championship final. This year, they've only got 1 finalist. Both of their semifinalists in the first heat were eliminated at El Meixal and Mo Katia. They had that great duel at the Spanish Championships. Katia's run 3:28 this year, medaled last year. I picked her to medal this year, so one of my medal picks is already out. But it's interesting because I talked to Mario Garcia-Romo about this, who did make the final from the second heat. And I was like, is it hard? You know, it's such a grind to make the Spanish team. You know, they have 4 real stars. Ignacio Fontes was a finalist last year. And Mario Garcia-Romo was 4th in the world last year. He barely made the team this year. He's like, yeah, man, it's tough. You know, Spain, if you're making the Spanish national team, you're one of the best 1,500 runners in the world. And I didn't talk to Meixal, but the Spanish press liaison essentially came up to me. He's like, hey, Meixal, he was speaking in Spanish in a different interview. He said the same thing. He's like, I had to peak just to make the team. Now I'm coming off my peak. It's only 3 weeks later. I don't know if that totally works because we did see last year the Spanish Championships were 3 weeks before Worlds and they ran great at Worlds. But I do think it's tough for sure, having to make that team and then come back and run again really well 3 weeks later.
John, the masses want to know, is Ingebrigtsen as big of a favorite this year, bigger favorite this year than last year? And why?
Of course, has anyone watched the Diamond League? Did he run 3:27 last year? Twice? No. Was he crushing people by as big a margins as last year? No. Was he closing races as hard as last year? No. If you want to know why Jakob's a much bigger favorite than he was in 2022, go back and read my preview. I made my case for him. That's why I think he's been like what he did over the final 200 this year is exactly why I think he's essentially unbeatable in the final, because he's still got that immense aerobic engine, but then he's just ripping people to shreds over the last 100, and he did it again today.
So let's talk about the second heat. I mean, it was kind of shocking. Again, we're watching most of these races at home. You've got a much better view of the races than we do. We're in a basement watching it on tape delay 30 seconds after we can hear the damn crowd cheering, trying to interview people so the nerds can listen to their damn YouTube interviews. Anyways, I missed the men's 100 final. 10 years ago, I said I'll never miss the men's 100 final. I always go up and watch it live. Only the old folks don't come up to watch it live. And then today I was like, no, I'll get the 10K interviews. I want to get the 3 Americans, John. So those of you
You're no Lyles hater. Let's be real. That's the reason you missed it, Rob.
No, I wanted to get the 10K interviews, and it was just like, you admitted it. Our seats like past the finish line, so it's hard to tell.
It's the worst. I mean, well, I don't want to complain about the view, but it's not a great view because it's head on.
Second heat, the men's 1500 goes off, and I kind of forgot Ingebrigtsen was in it. Like 800 in, I look up, and what's going on? Someone's like, Ingebrigtsen, what's he doing? Like, normally goes out and last for the first 100, takes the lead between 1 and 200, and then or 250, and then dominates. He was running in the pack, boxed in, and like at the bell, I'm like, there's a couple of journalists are like, "What's Jakob doing?" I'm like, it always opens up. That's just I always say at Cornell. It always opens up. But he's so much better than everyone else. At one point, I'm like, if I'm him at this point, just to be sure, I'm going to dead last place, letting the field go around and going around him. He didn't quite have to do that. He got out a little bit, so he was like 2 or 3 guys behind him, and then he just ripped it. And he came off the final turn, kind of like 3rd or 4th, and starts showboating like Weldon Johnson did with 4 laps and 20 meters to go at the 2003 USA's before Weldon got dusted. But unlike getting Weldon, Jakob didn't get dusted. He goes to the heat win, 3:34.98. Josh Kerr second, 3:35.54. The American Cole Hawker, who was up front, normally Hawker's being a little bit nervy in the back in the tactics. 3rd, he was up front, finished 3rd. Mario Garcia Ramos looked great in this championship, 4th, just like he was at Worlds last year. A couple guys I'm not expecting for medals: Isaac Nader of Portugal and Reynold Chariot, 5th and 6th. By the way, Timothy Chariot, he said he was expecting a fast final and he would be fine. Well, not so fine. 9th place.
All good things come to an end. Robert,
John,
I think Weldon may finally be right. He's not on the podcast right now. This is chance to take a victory lap. Timothy Chariot, is he washed? I mean, he didn't make the final. He had an amazing run. And it's not silver, gold, silver, and then 6th last year. That's most 1,500 runners would kill for that in their career.
All I'm going to say is, how has he done since his partner got popped for the whereabouts failures?
Not as well. I mean, 2021, didn't he get the silver? Wasn't that when Maningor was banned, I think, in 2020? So he did get Olympic silver in 2021, beat Jakob in the Diamond League final. Since then, he has gotten worse, but he's also been injured in 2022, and he's getting older.
I shouldn't even go there, but as Rose Runner says, he ran the worst tactical race I've ever seen. His tactics are absolutely god-awful. Like, they're so bad. Like, when he was better than everyone else, when you're better than everyone else, you don't need tactics because you just get on the rail and lead, and you're just running 1,500 meters of time trial and nobody can catch you. Like, I was sitting next to these guys from, I don't know where they're from. I'm like, what's he doing? Like, he's got an awkward stride, so you can see why he doesn't want to run the pack, but he's like running so much extra ground. Like, he's always out in the outside lane too. It was a disaster. He didn't advance. I like him, so I'm kind of disappointed. I want him to prove the data was wrong. But he's gone. But I was just kind of stunned. Like, Ingebrigtsen, what was he doing? We don't know, because for the 2nd day in a row, he speaks at length to the Norwegian media. And before I got to Worlds and wasn't staying up to 3 a.m. and tired, I was going to, like last week, I'm now in my RSS feed that I check. I go to Norwegian websites every day and I check for Ingebrigtsen articles and then I translate them and see what he's saying, because he's speaking at length Norwegian with me, not to us. And I interviewed him on YouTube in Norwegian and put it up. And I finally asked the guy, what did he say? He's like, he was celebrating because the crowd was asleep and he wanted to get them to wake up. And the guy said he felt.
Has he been in the stadium for the rest of the meet? The crowd's been great. I mean, they're not going to go nuts.
I don't want to say
that two laps of a 1500 semifinal.
Maybe I was like, I don't want to say that he was like dissing the crowd because it could have been lost in translation.
Yeah.
Maybe he just wanted to pump the crowd up,
sure.
Like how it was said. And then he said, like, the guy said, he said he felt really good. Now, I don't know if that's what he really said.
I got an email from someone else. Apparently, they also watched this interview. Assume they speak Norwegian. They said he merely felt good rather than really good.
Okay,
so, conflicting reports here.
So now the split wasn't, the last lap was not what the world of
See, this is the other thing. Like, someone points this out. They're like, Jakob, he closed in 50.6. And I go and read the official race analysis, and I'm like, holy shit, he ran 50.6 for his last lap when he was screwing around, closing in lane 2 on the final turn, and it was a 3:34 race. Like, is anyone in history this good? Like, this is insane. And then it's like, oh no, it was a 52 flat. Like, the timing splits, I don't know what numbers, where they're pulling this stuff from, but it added up to 50.6 and it was actually a 52. So that's been frustrating as a journalist to have to deal with that, but we roll with the punches.
It was a what?
So it was 52 flat, last lap. Still pretty good for having to go wide and not really take it seriously until the last 200. But, with at the bell, I was actually thinking, I'm like, he's in awful position. Like, this could be a disaster. I remember how the first heat went. I was like, 7 guys are all kicking for that spot. What if that happens this heat? No, it wasn't a problem for Ingebrigtsen at all.
I turned to this foreign journalist as like, if this guy doesn't make the final, I did say this in the middle of the race. Just as generally the point when I say, like, oh my God, could Cranny medal, could Kincaid medal, and they get dropped. I'm like, if he doesn't make the final, my website's going to explode. But interesting here, some people are saying they don't like his tactics, unsportsmanlike. I asked Josh Kerr, I said, what do you think Ingebrigtsen was doing? Did you see him celebrating early? Josh Kerr, who was extremely confident at Worlds last year, has not been talking as much this year, said he did point out, hey, I didn't see him celebrating because he was behind me at the point. So
I asked Haka. Haka was like, you know what? He's the Olympic champion. So when you've done that, I guess you've like, Haka didn't seem thrilled with it, but he's like, look, the guy has kind of earned some respect in this sport, and he kind of, admitted that.
Check this quote out. He's enjoying himself. This is from Kerr. Jakob's enjoying himself out there. I was doing the same thing last year, and everyone was giving me shit. I'm sure it will be a glory story now. But I had a good time. He had a good time. And the crowd had a good time. So what's there to complain about?
I'm not complaining. It was awesome. I got a text. A college coach texted me. He's like, I got to get the exact phrasing here. But he said, that was awesome. So anyway.
When we see what college coach that is,
you don't need to know. It's a prominent college coach of a top D1 program.
I'd like to see, please, just so you guys can honest my reaction here.
All right, that's the college coach. Oh, Robert doesn't even know this person.
I've never even heard of that.
Wow,
person.
This is disgraceful.
I'm gonna Google it now.
This is absolutely disgraceful. Robert has met this person and had multiple conversations with them. Like, it's really, really.
Johnson is a prominent coach. He's a low-level assistant.
He's the head coach of a D1 cross-country team. All right, we don't need to go.
Am I the right person?
I mean, that's a old bio. This person has a new title. Anyway, we don't want to get into too many details about this. Let's talk about this race. So Ingebrigtsen, stock up, even though his stock was already insanely high. I think Kerr and Garcia Romo both stock up a little bit. They looked good. Let's talk about Cold Hawker, Robert. So as one of our commenters here astutely noted, I picked Cole Hawker to medal at the very start of the year as one of my bold predictions. And I didn't believe in him enough because I didn't pick him in the prediction contest. I picked Mokatia. Shame on me. But I'm not saying I should be allowed to count this in the prediction contest, but I'm now going back and I'm saying Cole Hawker's going to medal, baby. I know there's a lot of other good guys.
So we're going to have 2 medalists?
2-3 for the U.S. No, I mean, the chances are it doesn't happen. Probably on paper, Kerr has a better shot. Well, definitely on paper, Kerr has a better shot. But I liked what I've seen from Cole Hawker. and he's feeling confident. I was asking him, how do you feel your shape compares to Tokyo in 2021 when he was 6 and he ran 3:31? He said, I'm fitter now. I lost a bunch of time earlier this year, but he said he's been running the best workouts of his life have been between USA's and this meet. And I was a little worried when he ran 147 in his tune-up 800 for this meet, but he's looked good. He was at the front. He was never in any danger of not qualifying in this race. I do think he still has a big kick. I don't know how much that'll help him in this kind of race, but I was like, last time in Tokyo, you kind of hung back. He picked some people off and moved up because it was really fast up front. This year, it's probably going to be a similar race. It's probably going to be 3:28, 3:29 to medal. Are you going to be close to the front? And he was essentially like, look, I was 6th in Tokyo. I was happy with that. I'm not going to be happy with 6th in the final. So, yeah, I think, he didn't come out and just say, I will be at the front, but he's going to run to win a medal. He's not maybe to win. I didn't say he was going to win the whole thing, but he's going to be running for a medal. He's not going to be content just making up the numbers, which was encouraging to me.
Wonder how many guys are going to be running for a medal. It's going to be wild. It's going to be exciting. I asked you, could he medal? You said yes. This is, during the heats.
I still absolutely believe Cole Hawker is capable of medaling. It doesn't mean he will, but when he was kicking in Oregon, I thought that guy could be a future medalist. And I said that about Josh Kerr in 2017. He won a medal. I believe that about Cole Hawker. That kind of shifting gears, you can't teach that.
But Kerr beat him today. Garcia Romo was 0.03 behind. Niels Laros looks amazing.
Yeah, this is a stacked race. This is why we love the 1500, Robert. Because, look, Jakob's the king right now. Well, Whiteman's actually the king right now. He's got a few more days as the reigning champion.
By the way, Whiteman apparently is doing commentary. I don't know if it's for the international feed or it's on Canadian. I know the Canadians heard him. Said he's great, which doesn't surprise me. So if they get Whiteman on US TV, then I won't be upset that it's not me doing US TV. But anyways, have we gotten to the women's 1500? Have we just talked about men? Because we got excited. Like nobody has time.
Yeah, let's.
People have work to do. It's a Monday morning when they're listening to this in the US. The Supporters Club members, it's over an hour. I said I want to keep 40 minutes, but there's just a lot to go to. Tomorrow's going to be a little quicker night because there's no distance finals. We have the 110 hurdle finals. We have the women's 100 final.
And then a bunch of prelims in the semis in the 400 hurdles and men's 400 hurdles.
But are there no distance races at all tomorrow?
No distance races of any kind.
It's a little bit interesting. So there's 2 days off here. One last thing about the men's 1500. Normally the final would be Tuesday. It's actually Wednesday. Neil Goaly's like, normally I want to compete quick. I like the extra day because I felt terrible today. But your Nuguse, I said, what do you think? He's like, I'm glad it's Wednesday. I think it's going to be, he said, I still think it's going to be really fast. He's expecting it to be fast and he wants to run fast. When I asked Kerr, he's like, I don't really care what the pace is. I can make something happen if it's fast from the gun or at the last 600. So he seemed confident about the scenarios. Women's 1500, very interesting in the sense of we had a couple surprises here. Sent home was...
Well, 2 of the 3 Americans, Sinclair Johnson and Nikki Hiltz, both went home. Corey McGee, 3rd straight championship final. Now, she was advanced to the final in Tokyo, but she earned the final the last 2 years. So, gotta give respect to her. She ran well.
Yeah, but here at Mesesha, one of the Ethiopians, there was I kind of viewed almost the 3 Ethiopians indistinguishable. Actually, the 4th Ethiopian who didn't make the team, I was going to pick her for silver if she made it. And I'm like, I don't have a lot of faith, though. They're so young. And we saw that. Here at Mesesha is out. But Burke Halam looked great, 2nd and for Heat 1. But Nelly Cheptegei of Kenya looks fantastic. Mm-hmm. She won the Heat 1. Coming in, I would have said the medalists are going to be Kipyegon, obviously for gold, and then some combination of Ethiopians for bronze and silver, maybe Laura Muir. When Hassan entered, I'm like, okay, she's got a medal, and then who's going to, I would say probably another Ethiopian. But Cheptegei definitely can medal. Like, this is a woman that was 4th at World Juniors last year, 4:11 PB. She's run 3:58. She just won her heat. I'm like, you ever competed at Worlds before? She's like, in Colombia. I'm like, that's juniors. She's like, yeah, I'm excited. So, God bless her. She's running great.
Robert getting mad at this poor 20-year-old.
I wasn't mad.
Okay.
John's.
Well, in my mind, I'm imagining that as she's just being light and happy and saying, "Oh yeah, I was at Worlds last year," and you're saying that was World Juniors.
No, I'm the only Western journalist that interviewed her. Watch out for her. Shira McGeehan of Ireland can medal. Corey McGee looks good. She's very competitive. But watching the first heat, I was like, wow, could Corey get a medal? Could McGeehan get a medal? And then I watched the second heat, and I'm like, I don't think so. Because the second heat, you got Kipyegon. You got Cheptegei.
Hassan, Laura Muir, who says that she's in the shape of her life.
Let me read out the times in the
This is the most ridiculous semifinal I've ever seen.
3:55.14, 3:55.18, 3:55.48. Now, when's the women's final? Is it only? It's Tuesday.
Yes, they only have one.
So this actually may be good for the Americans that they ran so fast. They got a full day off, but it took 3:57.85. God bless Adele Tracy of Jamaica. 3:58.77 national record. Sarah Healy of Ireland, her first sub-4, I think, 3:59.68. Abby Caldwell, who we love because she got screwed over last year, first sub-4, 3:59.79. None of them make the final.
Yeah, these are 4 women who ran they're at the World Championships. You got to be pretty good to get to the World Championships. They all ran PBs. Sarah Healy, Abby Caldwell, Esther Guerrero, and Adele Tracy. None of them made the final.
And how about this? Nikki Hiltz, the American champion who's had an amazing 2023, U.S. indoor champion, U.S. outdoor champion. If I told you, okay, she's going to go, they's going to go to World, Hiltz is going to go to Worlds and run 4 flat .84 in the semifinal, you'd be like, okay, great. Nikki made the final. Nope. Not only did she not make the final, she was dead last all over the place. Now, one person did drop out. And when I talked to Nikki afterwards, Hiltz was like, I had an amazing year. I never thought I'd make it back to Worlds. I'm not going to complain.
But they said that they felt something was off in this meet, right? I believe that was the gist of the interview, is that they weren't feeling totally themselves. And admittedly, that looked the case in the first round. I thought that Nikki didn't look as smooth at the end of the race, was not responding quite as well as
Nikki
they did at USA's.
She said Nikki said they didn't feel good throughout. And whatever. That gets me to a message board post, and it doesn't really accomplish anything. I'm going to stick to my guns here. It's 2 a.m. New York Times did a lengthy feature on her, and I think it's cool. The more track publicity we get, I think Nikki is an interesting person, but I thought the profile, I finally read it tonight, was an abomination. Like, the profile is obsessed, obviously, with what? 2 things, sex and gender. It's about how Nikki identifies as non-binary and blah, blah. And you had to read 13 paragraphs before you could induce, if you're a new reader, that Nikki is a biological female. There was no talk of biology. It was talked about how Nikki won the USA 1500. It didn't say that they won the women's 1500. And I'm like, why are you obsessed with gender? This is an article that should be about, at a minimum, gender and sex, and it was only about gender. And to me, someone on the message board made an interesting point. Nico Young came out, a rare, prominent NCAA athlete that's gay, and no one talks about it anymore. It's not brought up at every race. We love Nico. Cool for you. Be yourself. I would say the same thing to Nico, but we don't bring it up because someone's sexuality is not relevant to the race. I would say the same thing about whether you're an atheist or religious. Same thing with gender. It's not relevant to your race. Your biological sex is relevant to the race, and that's why in the category you are in. And to me, I think actually Nikki could be like a Caitlyn Jenner of the sport. Like, she's proving biology is real, but I think she leans too left liberally to make that happen. Sorry, that's my rant. I just couldn't have it. I thought the article was like a joke.
Here you are complaining we need to talk more about the races, and then you're going off on
but how John, if you wrote an article about Nikki Hiltz, would you wait to the 13th paragraph to say that Nikki is a biological female competing in the women's category?
I don't know, Robert.
Well, go ahead and read it tomorrow and then tell me what you think.
Okay. Now,
Rojo rant officially over.
The rest of this 1500, I mean, can we give a shout out to Katie Snowden?
Amazing.
She had never broken 4 flat in her life. 29 years old. She runs 3:56.
One last thing. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. Someone's saying, why is this brought up? It has to be brought up. And this is the interesting thing about transgender. Because by being transgender and by agreeing to agree to their pronouns, we have to say they. And it sounds so awkward that if you don't bring it up, the average viewer who doesn't know that biological males aren't allowed might assume that they're male. Whereas with Nico, you don't have to talk about sexuality because it never comes up. But with the pronoun thing, it's sort of automatically brought up at every single
Agreed.
race.
If you're non-binary, yes, it's unclear which sex you were
All right,
born.
go back.
That sort of thing. Anyway, Katie Snowden shout out. 29 years old, comes into Worlds with a 4-flat PB. I mean, I talked to her coach, Stephen Haas, before this, and he's just like, look, she's ready to roll. Like, she's been ripping workouts in St. Moritz.
Who's your coach? Stephen
Haas. And he was just like, she's in really, really good shape.
Wait, he told you this beforehand?
He did.
Okay.
She just ran 356.
John Haas are like besties.
So he picks up the phone.
A lot of agents.
So anyway.
I can tell you the list of agents that like John.
All right. Anyway. And I talked to Katie about this. I'm like, where did this come from? Because, it's one thing to know you're in really good shape, but even if you're in good shape, like, how do you get from 4 flat in your entire life? Actually, 4 flats from this year. She hadn't even run that fast in previous years. How do you get that from that to 356 World Championship finalist at 29? And she essentially said, she's had some bad luck the last few years. 2019, she had a significant injury. 2020 was the COVID year, kind of threw everyone off. She gets back to racing in 2021, but then 2022, she gets COVID and she gets an injury. So this year, she's really had no interruption. She's been based in Flagstaff since the end of 2021. She thinks she responds well to altitude, and that's really helped her. So combine the altitude with the healthy training. That's why she's like, look, I've always had the talent and the ability. I just haven't been able to get that consistent block of training. How many athletes do we hear say the same thing, right? But that's what she's saying. So congrats to her. She'll be in the final. I mean, who knows? Like, I don't see her beating 10 people and getting a medal, but 356, she's run faster than every Brit except for Laura Mueller. It was a great race. She, deserves some props. And also, Stephen Haas, for the record, she was like, I'm going into the call room. The last thing my coach said to me before I go in the call room is, you're in shape to run 356. And that's what she did.
Wow. I'm going to read some interesting YouTube comments here. The only way Hawker will medal is he punches out Kerr and Lyles while flailing his arms on the kick.
You mean the Safan Hassan strategy?
I guess. 8 Franks joined late and says, flip a coin to reach a championship final. That's an abysmal idea. All I'm saying is if there's a tie between 8th and 9th, what are you going to do? They haven't.
This happened World Indoors last year in the 60-meter hurdles. It was tied down to the 1,000th. They couldn't break the tie. So they had they rolled up a bib or something or they put 2 bibs together and
one had a mark on it and they pulled it out.
They rolled, and that's how they picked the final finalists.
And there's something in the U.S. sports with a coin toss if you tie down to the 8th. So I don't think it's a terrible idea. Someone wants to know, is Nelly Cheptegei related to Perez Cheptegei? I'm going to guess that the answer is no. If you don't know Kenyan
names are spelled differently.
The names might be spelled differently. But my understanding of the Kenyan last name is the name means like born at the morning, born under the sun, born under a tree. Like, it's not your family name. That's like your middle name. That's why they switch back and forth, because you'll see brothers that never had the last name. It's not because the dad is like having lots of wives or different women. It's because your name describes your birth circumstance.
Yeah, doesn't Cheptegei,
born in a hospital.
Cheptegei means born near a grain store, a granary.
Admit it. Some of you driving to work are like, Rojo's racist. He's had too much to drink. I've only had 2 beers. The beer, we didn't know where to buy the beers. We had to pay like $6 for them. Again, they must think we're American tourists. So I haven't had that much to drink. I'm dead serious, and John's confirmed it. So
Robert, since this is where we really should be ending the show, because people have got they've got to watch the meet on Monday night when they're listening.
But they got all day to listen to this. Yeah.
Should we tell them about our adventure getting back from the stadium tonight on St. Stephen's Day? You are correct. It's a national holiday. They're celebrating the foundation of the Hungarian state. It's every August 20th. That's why Worlds ended early tonight, because they wanted everyone to be able to get out to see the fireworks in Budapest at 9 p.m. We missed it, unfortunately. We were working. We did this for you people. So we're leaving the stadium. It's a disaster. The trains aren't running properly from the stadium.
There was trains, but we're just the train.
Well, there is a train, but we don't know where it stops.
It seems to go right from the stadium to right near our apartment. But when you go on Google Maps, it never says to get on that train, so we don't. It does stop. I think you'd have to change trains. We don't get on that. The bus isn't leaving for 20 minutes.
There are no taxis, and they ripped us off last night. So Robert's like, well, I got over here on a Lime scooter. And I'm just like, and he's like, what would you think about riding one of those back? We can ride right along the Danube because there's a bike path. And I was like, oh, this actually sounds like it could be fun. So we go up there, and after some struggles, we download the apps, we get on there, and we're riding along. I'm a little nervous by this, Robert. I've never done this in my life. I've never had good balance. It took me a while to learn to ride a bicycle. So hopping on this thing without a helmet, I was a bit worried. We start out okay, but then a bunch of drunk Hungarians who are celebrating their national holiday, they're on bike, the combination of bikes and scooters, I think, and they're coming down the bike path, and they just start playing chicken with us. They're just not moving out of the right lane, and they're coming right at us. I'm like, well, I'm not going to get in a crash with some idiot just because they don't want to move. So I pull off, and kind of at the last minute, they start laughing at me. Apparently they did the same thing to Robert as well. But we survived. Then we hit some cobblestones. That was, oh my God, white knuckle scootering, if I've ever experienced it. I had to hold on so bad. My hands, I felt like they were going to like
okay, enough story,
they were like
John.
Frozen. But yeah.
You did good, because I would have never done it with you if I hadn't practiced on the way there. So it was fun. I feel a little bit young. Now, can someone do the math here? I was going 22 kilometers per hour, it's like 22.3. And I'm like, can the runners possibly run this fast? And I looked it up.
Yes, they can. Because, Robert, think about this logically. How long is a half marathon? It's 21.1 kilometers, okay? So we know someone can run a half marathon in about 57 minutes. So you must have been going at about the same pace as Jakob Ingebrigtsen when he set the world record.
For half. So the 10K guys could beat me in my damn scooter because it looks fast.
Was that the max speed?
Yeah, we were 22 something.
That felt really fast. I can't believe that's what Jakob Ingebrigtsen runs for a half marathon.
I was debating like 10K. Could the 10K guys go this fast?
Jesus.
But I kind of now have you all ever run at night? It does seem like you're going much faster at night because you can't see that much and the trees are going. But I was like crazy. I was debating what to do if John hits a tree or hits one of these drunk Hungarians. Like, he's technically a contractor. I don't want to get in a lawsuit. I've got a family to support. Do I just leave John dead on the road? I wouldn't do this. So, John, can John on a scooter beat Jakob in a 1200?
Absolutely not.
No.
Yeah, that was, but we made it back okay. There were a lot of people out in the streets tonight because it was this big holiday. It was kind of fun. You'd see the stadium was lit up with the Hungarian flag.
Bernard Legaut's sister does not have the same last name. So I'm fine with calling these Kenyans by their middle name if that's their family name.
No, her name used to be Viola Legaut, though. And then she started going by Viola Cheptegei. She was one of the few people who did have the same last name.
Legaut means born during the rainy season.
I mean, Kennedy Cheptegei is saying Kiprop born during raining season. That's why there are so many Kiprops out there, because, the rainy season's like several months.
I was going to say we need to make 1,500 meter predictions, but we can do that tomorrow. We've gone on for too long. We've had a lot of fun. Is it really 2:20? Well, we have nothing to do tomorrow. We can wake up. We can go to this. John wants to go to a spa.
I want to do something fun in Budapest. Robert, I'm throwing out these ideas. Robert has to leave in like 3 days.
That's true.
And you're going to just come out here and just go only to the track stadium? No, we're going to do something fun. I think the spa would be a good idea.
Well, considering I've been here for, a day and a half, I finally ate my first meal that was my first, not meal, just piece of food that wasn't from McDonald's on the way back from the track. Because I only had 2 meals. I got in, went to the track. The only place was open McDonald's. Got up, was panicked because I woke up at like 1:30. So I got to get to the track for the 5K.
You woke up at 1:30?
I went to bed at 3. It was only 10 hours sleep. 10 hours sleep over 2 days is not a lot. And to go for the 100 meter semis.
So, heptathlon. Wait, we didn't even talk about the heptathlon. I feel about that. But
the crowd was wild. I think the crowd must have been cheering for the Hungarian who got 4th. But it was an exciting race.
This might have been the greatest ending to a heptathlon I've ever seen. And what was cool about it was the in-stadium TVs had the live scores updating. This is what I always think is the big issue with the heptathlon decathlon is it's very hard to tell exactly what someone needs, who's leading or whatever in the 1500, the 800. This one, it was tracking, and Anna Hole needed to beat Katarina Johnson-Thompson essentially by 3 seconds in this 800 in order to win the gold medal. And She got out to an early lead. She went out in like 58 or something for the first lap. She had a lead. She was leading on the back straight. Then KJT closed it up and won, but Anna Hall won it in 2:04.09, I think. Fastest ever 800 in a world championship heptathlon. She gave everything. She went for it. But KJT PR'd in the 800. She ran like 2:05, and her PB was 2:07 going in.
Wow. So 2:07, she would have lost if she runs that, right?
Yeah. So
I talked to her afterwards. It was just wonderful to hear an athlete. She had won another world title, right? But she's like, this is the best day of my life. She's like, it helps that the Theom didn't enter. It's kind of arbitrary. The person that probably would have won the gold doesn't enter, but it was a great race. Anna Hall, I think she believes she should have won the gold, but
she picked up she was wearing this band around her leg. I think David Woods mentioned she'd been injured in the high jump. Like her first couple events weren't as strong as usual. Like the hurdle, she wasn't. It's usually one of her better events, and she wasn't like amazing like usual. So. Anna Hall, look, she ran like a champion. Like she should be very proud of her silver medal. But given that she won Gotsis, she beat KJT at Gotsis earlier this year, she would have been hoping for gold, and she was nearly 300 points off of what she scored at Gotsis in May.
Hey, if you're enjoying the show, sign up for the Supporters Club. Let's Run.com/ subscribe. At a minimum, come to Let's Run every day. Click on the forum, click on ads, buy stuff, etc. Interesting comment here from Bad Clams. I hadn't seen Bad Clams Rose run a couple shows, so good to see the regulars back. Heptathlon is better than a decathlon just because the scores are closer, fewer events, and the 800 is better than the 1500.
Agree.
Even me as a former 1500 ace coach, I think it's an interesting idea. Ban the 1500 for the men's decathlon.
In a vacuum, like with specialists, I think the 1500 might be better than the 800. They're very, very close. And at the end of a multi where everyone's just exhausted, 800 is better than 1500, and we saw it tonight.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. If you're in the United States, happy rest of your Sunday. Commiserations to any of our English listeners who are up very late and witnessed the Lionesses lose the World Cup final. That was unfortunate. Good news is Brighton's top of the Premier League still. Anyway.
You're the top?
This is why I've been freaking out about it.
I didn't know. I hate when John talks about it.
We're top of the freaking Premier League for the first time in the history of the world.
When I did not know that, John. When I woke up at 1:30, I called John. I'm like, hey, how are the articles coming? He's like, I didn't know you wanted an AM recap. I'm like, no, this is the most important recap of the day. Most of our audience in the U.S. is asleep. And then I went to ESPN.com and realized the World Cup was like about to finish in the next 10 seconds. I called him back and I said, I apologize, John. As your boss that knows your passions, finish the World Cup and then finish the article.
Yeah, at that point, the game was already over, but we appreciate it, Robert.
Until next time.
Good night, everyone from Budapest.
One last thing. John Friedman, I agree with you. Why are the flash results that come off in the TV races wrong so often? To me, it's embarrassing. Seiko blew it last year with the timing, and they're trying to do some super technology, but it just doesn't work. So
maybe they're trying to make us appreciate what we already had, because they usually are so good that now that they're awful this year, we're actually like, we didn't realize we had it so good. But I took it for granted, and the fact that it's been inaccurate so often is actually very frustrating. It reflects poorly on the meet.
Correct.
All right. Till next time, everyone.